What's good? What's good, Queens College community? We are back for a second week of programming here for Black History Month as we celebrate Black excellence. I go by the name of Mr. Jeff Dess, and I'm so excited about the conversation that we're going to have today. I'm the co-founder of Trill or Not Trill, and we are hosting a month-long series here at Queens College. And I have to make sure I'm sorry, Black influence. I got to make sure I represent correctly. We are celebrating Black influence today and all month as part of our Queens College celebration. So, my friends, today's program is called The Black Network. It is essential for us to recognize as we celebrate in a multitude of ways that we celebrate the culture, that we celebrate the beauty. We also celebrate the spaces of professionalism and the spaces of understanding how do we build our network. We've heard the phrase that your network is your net worth, and I fully believe that the more that you interact with people, grow with people, meet folks in different professional fields and social settings, that's the way that our community grows. When we start thinking about Black influence, part of the influence that we talk about is the influence that we have on each other. So tonight, we are going to be hosting a great conversation with four amazing professionals from different areas, from different fields. They're going to be talking to you about their experiences as Black professionals. They're going to be talking to you as people who took steps to grow into their spaces. And they're all people of color. They're all Black, and they're going to be talking about some great things. So let's start today's conversation with our first guest. Before I bring him on, I want to give you a little insight on our first guest. He is an associate on Goldman Sachs transaction banking sales team. He was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, went on to study industrial engineering at Georgia Tech. And here's what I love. After 2 internships at Goldman Sachs, he joined as an engineer on an equities trading desk for 2 years prior to moving into his current role. So just to let you know, he was an intern first and rose through the ranks, and now he's here with us. I'd like to introduce our first guest, Brandon Wells. Let's bring Brandon to the stage.
Hey, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Brandon, what's going on? How are you today?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I can't wait for this conversation. You know, one of the things when we start thinking about influence and network and community is how do we grow that? And I just want to say the way that I was able to even meet you is through our network, right? Is being able to call someone and say, I'm looking for somebody to do some really cool stuff. And then they said, yeah, let me put you in touch with somebody who's doing some really cool things. So, I want you to, you're from Georgia, and now you're at one of the major institutions in New York City. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you made it from Georgia to Goldman Sachs?
Yeah, sure. So when I was in school, like you said, I studied industrial engineering, and within industrial engineering, there's an economics and financial systems track. So I got super interested in finance pretty early, and I knew this was something I wanted to do. Not really my particular role right now, but I knew I wanted to be in financial services, whatever that meant. I ended up kind of networking through Georgia Tech and ended up actually getting recruited at an HBCU networking event in Atlanta. So I ended up leveraging some of my, friends, old schoolmates, and some of my family just to figure out what was going on. Ended up networking, getting the internship that you mentioned at the beginning. And that's kind of what led me to get an interview, led me to go to Goldman. And one of the things that kept me at Goldman was, the network of strong, connected mentorship within the Black community at Goldman. So very early on, I was allotted, multiple mentors, multiple people that told me, here's how things are, here's what to look out for, and here's what you should take seriously, and here's how we can help you. So for me, that was Goldman is the only place I've ever worked, but having that strong support right out of school helped the transition, like you said, into the professional world, but also moving from Georgia to New York City.
Yeah, I mean that's really that's something, and I think like the communities are different when you start to think about Atlanta and New York. And I just wanted to ask you, like, did you ever feel as if you ran into some struggles? Or were there any moments where there were some hurdles that you felt like you would have to overcome? And I share that because, we have a lot of young folks and a lot of college students that are listening, and maybe you can tell us about maybe some hurdles that you had to overcome to getting either that internship or getting the job that you have today.
Sure. So I grew up not within Atlanta. I grew up actually in a suburb outside of Atlanta. So from if you look at where I grew up, my neighborhood was for probably two black families in a very very large neighborhood. I went to Georgia Tech. I was most of the time the only black student within my class. So when I got to Goldman, the ratio is kind of similar. So for me, it was a little bit more familiar, and I've experienced it growing up for better or worse, like how to be so introspective and how to understand that, you know, getting familiar with being uncomfortable in that type of way and being the only kind of black person in the room. So there definitely was hurdles in that, but I will say I'm lucky in that I was exposed to it a lot earlier, so I grew up with it and kind of had a different kind of experience that way. I think professionally, the transition at times was difficult because it is so much of a mentorship culture just in corporate world. So there were times early for me where I look at senior leadership on, all around and I'm thinking, there's not a black professional above me who can really relate to me. So how do I it is harder for me to sit down and say, you know, you don't know what it's like for me, and I can't really envision what I would look like in your seat. So it does make it hard, but to the point of this entire engagement is network. So having like supporting people around you and to be able to bring kind of your true self and like voice these things and have someone that is authentic around you with influence in your network to be able to talk about it, it was one of the most crucial things for me and still is.
I love that. I think mentorship is something that we often we gloss over sometimes, but it really does impact. I think everyone's level of success. Can you talk a little bit about some mentors? Any specifics? I don't need a name, but maybe something that a mentor gave you, a tip, a lesson that has stood the test of time and is holding on to you right now.
Yeah, great question. So I think one of the things that I got taught early on from professional mentors, but even from my parents, was you really have to be confident in yourself and know what you bring to the table. And it sounds a little bit cliche, I feel like, but at the same time, like there are times where you get in an uncomfortable professional situation, or maybe someone says something that's like completely off base and you get taken aback. But having the self-reflecting to look at it and just think, like I know what I bring to the table. I know no one's gonna outwork me. I know like I'm here and what I can provide. So this person who just said something to me, they don't know me. So how could I let something like that affect me? Because I know what I'm bringing to the table here. And that's one thing that I've kind of stuck with, my whole life.
Now, someone might think, and this may not be warranted, right? And I'd love to hear your thoughts. Someone might think, man, I'm a young black college student, and I want to work at Goldman or I want to work in banking or finance, and I just don't see enough black faces in there. There's not a room for me. I look at the numbers and I don't know if that's the space. Like, can you talk about um dispelling that myth and why it's just like important to see faces like yourselves in those rooms and saying like, yeah, keep going for it. Like, can we give some inspirational thoughts on how to keep pushing forward, even if you don't see faces all the time that look like yours?
I think it's a being, motivated toward a mission of like, one, chasing your dreams and do what you want to do, right? Like if being an executive or working in finance is something that you truly want to be passionate about and you truly want to change, you'll take the extra step and you'll have that extra initiative to kind of pave a pathway for someone forward. But for me, even more recently, having more newer employees coming out of college reaching out to me and talking to me about raising the point that you're raising, it kind of motivates me even more to think like, I may not be as far as I think I am, but I'm far enough to where I can turn around and help someone behind me and dispel that rumor, that myth that you're just saying. And I can tell you that, yeah, it's not going to be easy, but I thought the exact same thing, and it's better for you than it was for me in my time. And if we keep doing this together, eventually it's just going to grow.
I love it. I love it. Now, I want to go into networking, right? Because that's one of the conversations and one of the pieces we want to be able to teach people today. Now, you talked about it. I love it. You said that you were at a HBCU networking event. And sometimes networking can seem a little intimidating. It's a lot. You don't know how to navigate that space. So, if you can, one, tell me a little bit about that experience that you had at the HBCU networking session that opened some doors for you. And then if you can follow that up with maybe like some tips on like what people can do to help better network in their spaces.
I think one of the biggest things that helped me and networking there and just consistently is being very specific about what you like to do and what you want to do. And I think that that's one of the biggest things that also can help mentors help you as well. I think at times it's not generally enough just to say, like, I'm interested in finance and I want to work at a bank, but to say, I'm interested in this exact position because because my skills are X, Y, and Z, and I'm very interested in this part of economics or this part of investment banking or capital markets. And when you're that specific, it helps your network help you. Because if I say that I really want to be in capital markets, I really want to be a trader. If the person I'm talking to, that mentor, says, I don't know any traders, but I know so and so, so and so, then automatically you got another connection and you're getting another introduction. Or they say, I do know a trader. Here, talk to this person. And then you end up talking to them. It works out great. If it doesn't, you learn from it and you also have another person in your network. So I think being as targeted as you can, as far as like what you like to do and what you want, helps other people help you.
I love it. Now, let's talk a little bit about building community. And I think it's important for us to find community within our own Black communities, but also just being able to find support systems in any space, in any realm that's going to help push us to our next spaces of success, or to like hold us down when we need it most. Can you talk to us, Brandon, about community, right? And being able to find your communities in different rooms and different spaces, and how that's been able to kind of like help you throughout your work.
So in that question, I'm extremely fortunate, and that Goldman is extremely great at promoting his Black network and building a community from the beginning. So from day one, when I walked into the building, I was introduced to other Black professionals to say, hey, we're in the Black network. We'll sign you up for an email, and we'll meet you next week, and we'll have a conversation. And then from there, it's just the camaraderie that builds from aligning with people, and like that culture kind of permeates throughout everything you do. So I think I was a little bit spoiled in that sense, and Goldman is so, forward thinking and, wants that to be the case. And I think about, to the second part of your question, me being where I am, out of school for a couple of years now, when I look back, it's super easy for me to think, it was really hard for me to get that internship. I did have to jump through all these hoops to just get like to meet someone. I'm in a position now I can change that. So I can go back and I can have leverage that strong network that Goldman promotes to say, I think there's a better way to do X, Y, and Z to make it easier for these people to lower the boundaries wherever they may exist.
Fantastic. That's good work right there, man. Now, I want to ask, as we start to wrap it up, I want to ask if there's some folks that are in college right now, or grad school, or in any of these spaces, that are thinking about wanting to get into finance, or wanting to get into like the different types of roles, to be a future colleague of yours. What are some tips that you would give to somebody that's in school right now, that can help them say, like, you know what, this is how I can get to where Brandon is, and beyond.
I think the biggest thing is doing your research and figuring out, what is truly interesting to you. Because I think to get to a place and, anywhere in finance, especially on Wall Street, it's extremely competitive, but the person that can, show that they want it the most and has the most well researched is the one that's probably going to be in the best position. So I'd say definitely do your research and, learn about wherever you're applying, learn about all the roles, learn about what they do, learn about what they care about, and be as well researched as possible. But then use every part of your network, like you said. Each one of these schools, like opportunities like this through Queens College or wherever school you go to, leverage whatever you can internally to get connected. And eventually, someone's 2 to 3 degrees connected away from someone that you can help you. So I think it's just not being shy as far as sending your resume around, sending a blind email to someone, sending a LinkedIn message to someone, and just being, is out there and a champion for yourself as much as you can until you have that network, and then you kind of keep it up.
I love it. So, Brandon, before we let you go for now, because we're going to hopefully, time permitted, we're going to bring you back, at the end. But what I wanted to say is that, if there are any questions, shouting out our executive producer in the back, if there are any questions on YouTube and or Facebook Live, just make sure that you do write those questions down so that we can make sure we can get them to Brandon, for you. Brandon, I just want to say thank you so much for rocking with us in this first portion of our conversation, and continue to do the work that you're doing. And we really appreciate you coming on with us today.
No, I appreciate it, Jeff. It was great to meet you. This is a great program, great initiative. So thank you for having me today.
All right, we'll be in touch and we'll see you in a few. Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you.
All right, so we got Brandon Wells just dropped some gems on us, and I think some of the things we want to take away from him is the importance of networking. Right, when we talk about it, it's just understanding that you're only probably 1, 2, or 3 degrees away from the dream job, the dream position, or the space that you want to go to. So don't stop. And I think when we start thinking about networking, don't always think that you have to network up. Sometimes you have to network down or network across. Anybody can help, from somebody who is the vice president of a university to the person who's the housekeeper in that same building. You never know what that process is going to be like. So make sure that you're networking properly. All right, so our next guest is Brendan Francis. He's over at LinkedIn, at Airbnb right now. Sorry, Brendan. And I want to bring him out and talk a little bit about some of the work that he's doing, and let's get this conversation moving. Let's pull up our next guest.
How you doing?
Brendan, what's good, brother? How are you?
It's good. It's been a long, productive work day, but I can't complain. I'm happy to be here.
I like that, man. You know, one piece, whenever professionals or anybody says it's been a long but productive, that means there's a lot of meetings, a couple of emails in there, but you're still holding this down, and we appreciate you.
I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. So, Brendan, can you tell us a little bit more about, like, what is your day-to-day? Like, what do you do and some of the work that you're bringing to the table?
I'm a senior risk analyst at Airbnb, and I'm responsible for the procurement of all the global insurance programs for the company, as well as some very, very legalese, compliance-related things that the company has to do in order to operate business. And I consult all our internal departments on anything risk-related.
Fantastic. All right, Brendan. So yeah, you're in there. You're reading the line by lines and doing some important work. So, Brendan, let's start off by this. Can you talk a little bit about, like, your experience? So where you started to kind of like where you are today. Was this something that you always wanted to do? Were this the work that you always wanted to be in? Can you tell us a little bit about your journey?
So I studied insurance risk management at Howard University, and I always wanted to be in this field. Once I graduated, started as an underwriter in New York, and then I job hopped until I got to an ideal job. Ideally for me, I always wanted to work for a company that I actually patronize and actually care about. That would be like my first word of advice. Work for a company that you actually care about and you actually use in your day-to-day life. It makes things a lot more interesting when you actually have a personal interest in it. And thankfully, after 10 years being out of college, everything's lining up. I'm enjoying the work that I'm doing at Airbnb, and it's affording me a pretty nice lifestyle.
I love it. Now, you mentioned going to an HBCU, so you went to Howard. Can you talk about that experience, about how we're going to an HBCU either changed or impacted the work that you're doing now? Did it have any impact or effect?
Going to HBCU gave me friends in every city. I'm from New York. I had no interest in going to any school in the state of New York. I wanted to leave. And so going to an HBCU, the benefit is you're going to school with a lot of people from all over the country. At least that was the case for Howard. I can realistically say that if I end up in Timbuktu, America, chances are I'll be connected with somebody that I went to school with. And it's also a lot of opportunities were brought there. I studied in the School of Business. Every company showed its face at least once as part of its diversity recruiting initiatives, which gave us a lot of opportunity to network with those companies, take up internships, get different experiences, get some free food. And so really, I appreciate the opportunity that Howard gave me just from making myself very aware of what it is to be Black in America, but also to know that while our everyday experience in America obviously isn't with our own people, it's nice to be able to be educated amongst our people and feel confident wherever we go that, we have all the tools of success.
Yeah, that's wonderful, man, because I think that's sometimes what people try to denigrate HBCUs is by saying, oh, well, that's not how the world looks and that's not how the outside space is going to be. But being able to be surrounded by your community, I think just adds so much benefit to your confidence and to being able to recognize like, yeah, I got my folks almost anywhere I go.
Definitely. I still believe in the role of HBCUs in 2022 and beyond. So grateful for my experience.
Now, Brandon, can you talk a little bit about the space? Like when you were working and thinking about risk management, was that something that you felt like in that field there was a struggle? Were there many Black faces in it? Did that impact? Can you talk a little bit about that space as far as the field overall before you talk about Airbnb?
So I actually ended up in risk management because my first job ever in life was working as an office manager at an insurance agency that was out the block. And I learned it pretty much at an early age. It doesn't matter what facet of corporate America you go into, will be the minority. So piece of advice I would have is just get over that now. You're not going to be in high numbers and high population wherever you work, and that's fine. You don't have to be around a bunch of people that look like you in order for you to succeed. But I was thankful that Howard has one of the oldest risk management programs, and so I was learning from a lot of OGs that worked at different risk management departments or insurance companies across America that were Black, and they were able to tell me their experiences, their wins, their losses, and really to learn from them. And so that really advocated confidence in me being able to step into whether it was an internship or a job that, one, I know what I'm talking about and actually feel the credentials of what this job entailed, and two, that I could be able to communicate that effectively and cogently.
That's dope, man. Now, with that being said, were there some hurdles that you had to overcome? I'm sure there were. Can you talk a little bit about some hurdles that you can help maybe impart to our young folks that they may avoid by listening to what you're about to tell them?
I don't really view anything as hurdles. It's either going to work out or work out better. I also believe that I finesse my way through life in a very effective manner. There definitely are jobs. I mean, I've had my intelligence questioned. Anyone that's in a corporate America setting will eventually get one of those temperature check questions where, what type of paper do you read? Tell me about your upbringing. A question that is very, very unrelated to whatever it is you're interviewing for. However, it's a means of discrimination from the point of the interviewer who is trying to discriminate against you. Mm-hmm. You really just got to side eye and keep it moving, play cute, just brush that off. And I guess like in real hurdles, I've definitely had bosses I didn't like. I've had very overt racism in the workplace, like saying that they'll actually let you on a golf course or something like that. You really just got to keep a calm head about you and keep your life pushing. That's honestly the best advice I could put, is to always just keep your cool and stay true to yourself.
Yeah, I mean, that's real, right? Because you're always going to see, everything from microaggressions to outward racism on a day-to-day basis in the different spaces is going to happen. So being able to navigate that and still find, these pockets and these large areas of success are for sure something that I think we just need to definitely embrace. I love that advice. And I love it too. I love the finesse, man. Sometimes you got to finesse some of these spaces too. Cause that's a real word right there. Cause everybody's finessing. And I think like sometimes you feel like we're not supposed to finesse. And I'm like, nah, we gonna finesse too. So yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, most jobs that you're going to apply to are going to be filled by a personal relationship or some type of recommendation. It's not necessarily you apply online and then somebody will review your resume. Unfortunately, a lot of those are just going to be overlooked. And the finesse is as simple as go on LinkedIn, sign up for the free premium, message somebody that works at that company. They likely have a financial incentive to recommend somebody that's qualified for that job. They might get a referral bonus or something like that. So even if they don't know you, then they'll probably reach out to whoever to refer you. And now you have an in, and then you can do your own thing. There's a million ways to get an audience with people, whether it is just outwardly stalking them or, more subtle, proper methods like connections from a friend of a friend, LinkedIn, a blind guessing their email, whatever it is. there's always a way to figure something out.
Yeah, I love that, man. I think that's real, right? Is that we have to use all the resources to meet all the people that we possibly can. I think it's not just, the traditional, let me go to an event. It's rolling through LinkedIn. It's figuring out emails and being creative. It's also saying, like, sometimes I love that you mentioned that too. Sometimes you get that free premium LinkedIn, free month or free 30 days or whatever. It's worth it. It's worth the free trial. And it's to me, I think it's also worth paying for it if you can afford it, or asking your school to pay for it for you, right? Like, ask your college and university to see if they can pay for a premium LinkedIn account for you so that you can navigate those spaces. I think that's dope advice. Now you're at Airbnb. I gotta say, I'm not gonna front. I love me some Airbnb. It is like you. I love the fact that you said you're working for a company that you use, that you appreciate. Now, can you talk a little bit about risk management a little bit, but also like the company? Like, how is it for you working in that space, as a Black man, but just as a professional in that world? Can you talk a little bit about your experience there?
It's been a great experience. I mean, as a Black man, I live in LA, and most West Coast tech companies have us few and far. So there's a good amount of us, but we ain't a majority or notable population by any means. It's a fun company in the sense that it is a company that I truly believe wants to better the world and also wants to really influence change in a good way. I got into Airbnb just because with my second house, I Airbnb'd it whenever I wasn't there. And then also when it came time for me to look for a new job, I was able to leverage me being a host as me having functional knowledge on this company. And so that assisted me with getting this job. I'm still a host to this day, and I actually enjoy it. Pays my mortgage, so I can't complain about that. But the company itself is fun just because it's a lot of their different wacky things that the company works on, which can't get into too much specifics about that, but a lot of really cool projects that really like test your knowledge and also keep your interest, as well as working with a lot of very knowledgeable people that have come from different walks of life and found their way with the startup. So I enjoy it a lot.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And I guess if you had one more tip if somebody wants to work for a company like Airbnb, what would be a piece of advice that you would give to them?
Well, if you want to work for any of these companies, whether it's Facebook, Airbnb, any tech company that you can name of, definitely create a story on how this personal brand resonates with you. So how do you use it in your day-to-day life? And not a superficial means like I take a bunch of pictures on Instagram, but how has this company benefited you in your day-to-day life? How do you truly connect with it? What do you feel like you could add to this company and really improve it? Because all these companies have problems. And if you could figure out a problem that you're uniquely qualified to solve, you will always have a job. And so if you could definitely craft that message, that will help you. And if not, if you can lie really well about it, that's part of the finesse.
I love it, man. I love that advice. Brendan, thank you so much. We're going to hopefully bring you back as long as time permits, but want to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your day today. This was really, really dope. I love this conversation and appreciate the advice that you gave to our young folk today.
It's a pleasure to speak with you all. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right, brother. Talk to you soon. All right. So again, I want y'all that are listening out there today to just realize, how to finesse these spaces. It's not just simply going into a room and hoping that you know somebody. It's being able to navigate these rooms as effectively as possible. It's also about making sure that you take advantage of all the resources. I mean, Brendan talked about the importance of a LinkedIn account, but also talked about the importance of trying to figure out how to tell your story and your narrative when you're working your way through these various companies. So I appreciate the information and the advice that was given to him. This next guest, we're going to bring up our third guest today. And I just, this is my sister. This is my friend from a long time. And I can't wait to engage in this conversation with her. She is currently a revenue cycle training manager at Huron Consulting Group. It's a brand new job that she started in October. So I'm super excited to hear a little bit about the work that she does. But she is going to drop some gems from a professional setting that I know is going to be impactful. Let's bring up my dear friend Shamika Alexander to the stage. Shamika, come to the stage.
Hi, Jeff.
Shamika, what's going on? How are you today?
I'm well and favored.
That's it. Amen. Amen. Shamika. So Shamika, when we read your title, I'm gonna go right into it, right? When you read your title, a lot of people might not necessarily know what that exactly means when you say a revenue cycle training manager. So can you talk to us a little bit off top of what does that mean and what do you do?
Yeah, so I create and train, deliver, create value, survey training material for a lot of hospitals, and they call anything from insurance claim revenue cycle. So I train anyone that has a contract with my consulting firm as far as billing, claiming, insurance verification, all adult staff. I create the training material and deliver the training to them and approve the training.
That's it. So you're working with professionals on a day-to-day basis from an HR perspective, from a training perspective,
Yes.
from all of those worlds. Now, so I mean that means you've seen a lot
Yes.
of things in your time. So can you talk to us, Shamika, a little bit about navigating rooms where there's a lot of different voices, and then as a woman of color, being able to walk into any space knowing that you may not be, you might be the only woman in the room, you might be the only Black person in the room, you might be the only Black woman in the room. There's a lot of hurdles, but you're meeting with all these people. So can you talk a little bit about that, like navigating those spaces?
Yeah. In my career, I have always a lot more times than I am, happy to say I've always been the only Black woman in a room. And one thing that my mom told me as young, and then I had a mentor that to reiterate it, is that whatever room you walk in, you are the one that belongs there the most. And what that means to me now, seeing careers and what other people in these rooms look like, is that, well, they had a leg up. They either had a legacy, their grandfather worked there, their uncle worked there. They've had connections for sometimes generations, next door neighbors, and homeowners association. Like, it's crazy how you realize how some people get a job. And that wasn't the case for me. Mine was on true merit, on true, networking, on hard work, on the references that I did able to get for it to be of a greater value. So always remember, like, even though you're the only one in a room, you're typically probably the one that's worked the hardest to be in that room.
Yeah, that's a word right there. And from knowing you personally and knowing you professionally, I know that you've been somebody who has, and you've even mentioned it. I know you're somebody who has served as a mentor for a lot of folks and have had mentors that have impacted you as well. So can you talk about like how to find a mentor, especially if you're a person who feels like alone in a lot of these spaces? You're trying to walk through these walls where again, people don't look like you. Even if people do look like you, still being able to find somebody that's going to help you out. So can you talk to us a little bit about like mentoring and how to find one?
Yeah, it could be difficult for sure. I always give the example is you want your mentor to be someone that connects to you on a lot of different levels. Sometimes it doesn't mean like they look like you culturally, gender, but they've had the same job as you when they were entry level. They understand the issues, they understand the hard work you're doing. So it's reaching out that way. And I also recommend people not to just have one mentor. Being a mentor takes a lot of work, and sometimes life does not give you the opportunity to keep up with a mentee. Things change, people move, a lot of life happens. So make sure you have more than one mentor. Sometimes the mentors doesn't even have to be really in your same company, but in your same industry, a former industry. As a college student, your professors are great mentors. A lot of professors are adjuncts. They have a lot of connections in a lot of companies. They could start some mentorship at that point and lead you to a different direction. As introductions, and just always introduce yourself. Jeff has known me for a very long time. I'm not very friendly, but I am a friend. But you have to push yourself out there to introduce people, introduce yourself, what exactly you're looking for, and you have to do work also in being a mentee. What are you doing to make sure this mentor is, putting this investment in you? You have to follow up. You have to create the time, get on that calendar, make that call back.
Yeah. Now, one of the things too that I know about you is that you've also worked in like the space of job search, helping people create better resumes and create better job profiles to make sure that they're prepared before they even talk to the employer. So, I think a tip that I'd love to have from you is maybe one or two things that you would tell a person who is either looking to get the internship or the job. Like, what is something that you're like, listen, make sure you're doing this or make sure this is present? What are some of those employment tips before we even get into the space that you can share with us?
Make sure you're looking everywhere. If you have a company in mind, follow them on Instagram, follow them on Facebook, follow them on every kind of social media, because they drop gems like that. Not everything is just on a website. I also think going into every industry has some kind of society or club that you can be part of. And sometimes when you're a college student, they let you do it for free. For example, SHRM is Society of Human Resources Management. If you're a college student, you get half off that kind of membership fee, or sometimes free. Sometimes your university will pay for it because they say they see the value in it. So just always just look at different kind of outlets to try to get in the know. Do it frequently, because a lot of internships, especially like that kind of opportunity, has a deadline. So every day you want to be checking something to see you didn't miss the deadline. And if you did, still try for it, still go for it. Internships are not just for the summer. Some companies, they roll their internships all the time. And the summers when you have more. Sometimes an internship has to be unpaid depending on what kind of financial backing the company has. But then even just as new, I hooked someone up with a very big social media influencer, and it was a free internship, but this person has like 8 million followers. She dropped that person's name. They had a job after the internship. So just look at social media and just follow exactly what you want to look at. Keep looking at it. I'm a big advocate of having paid interns. I know a lot of people will say, oh, you have to have an unpaid, pay your dues. A lot of times there is some kind of payment you can get for it. So try to look for those firstly. Everyone has bills, and money goes a long way for college students, but an unpaid one can mean a credit. It can mean a stipend. It can mean, okay, I'm paid now, but you do get the job next.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point about the internship and the unpaid internship, is that there's always a way for payment, right? So it's like, if you're not getting paid, can you guarantee that my travel is free, or that, you give me a
I get
Metro
lunch.
card or lunch,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's really, really good advice. Now, can you talk about some of the hurdles? Because I know that there's also been that, and I'm going to ask you a specific hurdle question, because you're training people often. And sometimes you're training people who are not trying to hear it, right? People who have a lot of deficiencies, who have a lot of issues, who have been racist, sexist, and everything else, and all of the above in an office space. How do you help people who are dealing with that kind of hurdle, where it's like, I have to train them, I have to train you and them at the same time? Like, I don't know if I'm wording it correctly, but just being able to be in those rooms and helping people figure out how to exist sometimes in those spaces.
Yeah, so I've had a couple of times where people of different backgrounds just thought, number one, I was the intern. There was a white gentleman next to me. He was my assistant. They automatically just assumed he was the manager and I was the intern. And I politely said, no, I'm the main event, and laugh it off. But, that kind of realism, sometimes it means no harm. But, it does become trying as a professional, where that's always the go-to for you. And you've earned, again, the right to be in that room. As a trainer, typically with adults, they know, like, as much as you might think I'm different or might want to buy in what I'm saying, typically in that room, they need my knowledge. So that is very clear. I've had someone, I did a diversity training, and I said, oh, well, I'm Catholic. And someone said, no, you're not. And I said, well, why wouldn't I be? So it's a lot of things where you have to put things in this category, still continue and get to the end result, and use that as a learning experience. Don't let anyone knock you off your game. I have to be there for a role. I have to continue, educating these professionals for their jobs. A lot of times, if they don't pass my training, they don't have a job again. But know your value first, and know, like, just they say that you belong in that room more than anyone else, most likely.
Now, I'm going to ask you a follow-up to what you just said, because that's really great. I love how you ended that about knowing your value. How do you help somebody display their value? Like, what are your tips on that? Like, that's one thing I love about you and the work that you do is in every room that I've seen you in, again, professionally, personally, you exude this confidence about the work that you do and the presence that you bring into the room. And sometimes that's a little difficult for people to get off, right? So how do you exude, or how do you teach somebody to be more confident in themselves and the work that they're doing?
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing in just our population, right? Like you just assume people know more than you. And it's quite the opposite. I can't tell you how many phonies are walking around here because they don't know their content. So if you come in a place and you're like, you know what you're talking about, stand hold of that. If you read that book, if you had that experience, if you did your due diligence, 9 times out of 10, you're the only one in the room that's actually done it and that can say proof about it. So, do the work. And that's what the confidence is. A lot of times, again, there's people that's there because they worked in that same job for 17 years. They got a hookup and they still don't know their own job, things like that. Imposter syndrome is a real thing. It doesn't have to be, because 9 times out of 10, when we're in a room in these companies, we are the ones that actually have to work our butts off to get there.
Yeah, I mean, talking about imposter syndrome, right? So just being able to not think that you belong in the room, right? So it's just
That's right.
being able to know spaces, thinking I do not belong here,
That's right.
and that's something that that we should really believe in, right? We do belong here, right? We do belong in these spaces. So I'm really happy you brought that up. So let me ask you another thing, Shamika. So can you talk about some hurdles, right? I'd love to hear about some hurdles that you had to overcome. And we've seen it in different spaces. Brandon Wells talked a little bit about some of the hurdles he had to deal with. I love Brandon's answer where he said, listen, there's no such thing as hurdles. It's either it's going to be good or it's going to be great, right? We're going to figure these things out. So can you talk about maybe some of the spaces you've had to navigate and how you were able to overcome some of those challenges?
Yeah, one will be my name, right? Shamika. Depending on what kind of area, the group you're in. I've had someone of senior leadership refuse to say my name correctly. And then I just said, before we begin, I want to make sure everyone knows how to pronounce my name. It is Shamika or Miss Alexander. Because then someone said, well, what do they call you for short? I said, it's Shamika. And, that took a lot because I was in a very big senior room. And then I said a joke. I said, well, if you can say Tchaikovsky and Beethoven, Shamika should not be an issue.
That's right.
So, it's that kind of stuff. It could be micro, it can be very passive. And sometimes you let it roll off your back because you have more things going on. And other times you have time, right? And that day I had time. But it's about respect, and it's about respecting yourself first. I could give respect to anyone because I respect myself in a way and hold my head high in a lot of rooms that, some people see it and they're like, oh, let me get myself together, fall in line.
Yeah, that's such a word right there. I think the idea of authenticity is so important too, right? So just being able to really be your authentic self. And I love that story about, listen, there's no shortening my name. The name is the shortening of my name is reserved for like my family.
My play, yeah,
right.
my play.
Right. For the fun time, not
you
for y'all.
pay me a good salary. I think you need to call me by my full name.
Right. That's real. And I just love that importance of that message of being authentic. Like y'all have to be that person who's not afraid to be yourselves. And I think sometimes when people think authenticity, that means that we got to show up in a certain way. No, that just means showing up and being the professional, or just being your authentic self that can navigate and be existent in these rooms.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So last question for you, Shamika. If you had to give some tips for some students and those that are listening as far as how to succeed and how because everybody has their own success story. So so I want to hear yours, but I want to hear yours from a perspective of the tips, or a tip that you can give that says, listen, this is how you can get yourself into some rooms, into the next level, to be sustainable, to retain the things that you're doing. Like, do you have anything that you'd like to share as a parting word?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, especially in our community, is, don't reach for the stars, reach higher than that, because our dreams are limited because of what people think we can do. and its limits. Sometimes it's up to a certain ceiling. Nothing is nothing is unattainable. Nothing you can say as a dream should be, looked down on and say, well, that's not reasonable. Really do just go for the yes and go for it. If not now, one day soon. If not today, it's going to be tomorrow. Really keep that kind of positive mentality in your head, because there's so much other factors that will hinder you thinking, well, that was a really crazy dream, or that was a really crazy business idea. But you know what? The same thing happened with Bill Gates. The same thing happened with Bezos. The same thing happened with all these people that are flourishing in this world with their crazy idea. So in this community and in this room, let's have them. Let's support it. And let's don't, if that's your dream, let's all help to make it come true. How can we help you?
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. And Shamika, thank you so much for sharing and taking this time out today. You're a friend and a sister of mine, and you really do such amazing work. And we thank you for your time and rocking with our Queens College group
That's right.
today. And we'll chat with you later. Thanks
It's been
again.
a pleasure.
All right. Man, this is cooking. If y'all are not getting these gems out of this, I don't know what's going on. I think y'all are missing out if you are not getting the work. Shamika just dropped some really good stuff for us. So I want you all to really just look back and think about what it is that we need to do to be our best selves. And Shamika really talked about authenticity at the end there. And that's it. There's this show, The Wire. And The Wire, there's this great line where one of the characters says, "My name is my name." And I think that's just important for you to not hide your name, not hide your voice. I've had students that have tried to hide accents and tried to hide themselves because they felt as if it was something that was going to hinder their development. I'm going to let y'all know it's not. Like, growth and excellence is there. So thank you again, Shamika. We got one more guest for y'all. We got one more person for you. This guy's another brother of mine. I'm really excited to have him come onto the stage. He is currently at Google serving as a people ops associate, and he's also a full-time health coach. So he's double dipping at the same time as an entrepreneur and working in the tech space. Let's bring to the stage this Queens College Celebrating Black Influence stage, our Black Network stage, Mr. Justin Jones. Let's bring Justin to the room.
My main man, Jeff. Good
That's
to see you,
guy.
brother.
That's my guy, Justin. What is good, man? Good to see you.
Good to see you, man. I'm blessed. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. So, Justin, I'm going to tell the Justin story as best as I can. And then I want you to either fill in the dots or tell me a little bit of where, because I love the Justin Jones story, at least in relation to me. So I met Justin at a conference, at a leadership conference, student leadership conference. And he presented himself well, was just like super dynamic, brilliant throughout the entire conference, invited us to speak, invited Trill or Not Trill to come to his college campus at Penn State and said, let's rock. And then when I got there, I was like, found out Justin was like the president of the school, was in a fraternity, was, Mr. Student Leader on that campus. And at that time you said you wanted to work for Google. And years later, not too many years later, you're working for Google. At that same time, you were still also training people like on the low, like your friends. And then here you are as a personal trainer and health fitness coach. I mean, I just love the work that you're doing. So Justin, I have to ask you, based off of that, like, how did you navigate all of that? Like, and the last thing I'll say is that you went to a predominantly white institution, and I'm going to emphasize the predominantly part. And you succeeded in so many rooms. So, I see I'm gushing because this is like one of my students here, my main mans. So I just love to hear the story, Justin, of that navigation from the college space into the tech space, but also the entrepreneurial space.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I call myself lucky, right? Because from a young age, I had a pretty good head on my shoulders. I knew what I wanted to do, right? I remember telling my dad when I was like 8 years old in the car, like, "Dad, I want to be in business." He remembers this day till this day. So going to school and being a business major, getting my dual degree in management and marketing, that was pretty easy. I knew I wanted to do that. So coming into college, I said, "All right, I'm coming into college." I'm like, "Mom, Dad, I know you're gonna spend a lot of money on these loans, still paying off these loans right now. I'm gonna make the best out of these 4 years. Like I'm gonna make sure these 4 years literally take care of me for pretty much the rest of my life, and they set up opportunities for me going forward. Because if I'm gonna spend thousands of dollars here, this thing has to pay off. So coming into school, it was focus mode. Like, I'll be very honest, the parties were there, the good times were there, and I dibbled and dabbled in that, right? Especially freshman year, just getting there. But it was really, how do I make sure that by the time I say I'm out of here and they call my name and I'm crossing that stage, that I can say that I gave my all. So I think just having that mindset going in helped me. But I mean, other than that, man, it was a lot of making sure that every single day, every single week at school was intentional, right? Who was I networking with? We talk about networking a lot, on this panel. Who was I networking with? What conferences was I going to? Right? The conference that I met you at, Jeff, was a conference that I actually advocated for when I was in student government at my school and I was president. I said, hey, I want to take myself and leadership to this conference. And it ended up in a relationship that I'm happy to say, we still have with me, you, Lenny, and Trilla, not Trilla, all the people, over there. It's just amazing. So I think it's just really making sure that I was in the right room, but of course, going into college, having that go-getter mindset and really not wasting any opportunity.
Yeah, I mean that's real. The go getter mindset, I think, is something that is important. It's essential, right? It's something that
Yeah.
we don't often do, and I think like to be a go getter means you have to be consistent. And I think that's something that I've always seen with you is that there is consistency. I mean, even in fitness, right? It's just like as hard as it is, the consistency is really what's going to get you to the level that you want. I'm no fitness
Absolutely.
expert here, but I be in the gym too. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, you be in there.
I'll be in there. I'll be in there. So, Justin, can you talk a little bit about being the black student at the predominantly white institution and how you were able to really just bust through? And I know, some people feel like it's difficult because there's challenges. I'm the only one. There's not many like me, and there's all of these hurdles and these things. But you were the president of student government, so that means you were voted in there, and then you succeeded. I mean, so can you talk about like that relationship you had with like the university and your peers?
Yeah, yeah. So, we talk a lot about being in a room. We talk a lot about, you know, being a African American male, not seeing myself, not seeing representation. I think it's important to have the mindset, especially for those who are listening, as you're going to this rooms, as you're going through college, you're not going to see a lot of you. And I think we can have the mindset of, okay, because I don't see a lot of me, I don't belong there. But the mindset I've always had is because I don't see a lot of me, they actually need me there. Right? I have a certain perspective. I have a certain viewpoint that they're not gonna see because they didn't grow up in the Bronx, right? They didn't come from where I come from. So because of that, I actually deserve to be there. So coming into a predominantly white school, it was more so like, okay, I don't see myself, but how can I make sure that by the time I leave, my name is remembered. My name is remembered. A black man, right? Because that may inspire the next young black kid coming from the inner city, going to Penn State and say, "Oh, he did it. Oh, he was SJ president. Oh, he was in a fraternity. He was doing this. Oh, if he did it, I could do it too." Right? So it was also making sure that I left my mark there, but that I also, of course, made sure that I built the relationships there as well. Right? There's still people from school that I still talk to this day. I mean, on a monthly basis, just checking in with, making sure that I'm keeping that relationship alive. And they'll even tell me about, hey, we got this young kid who's coming up and aspiring to do amazing things at the school. Can you hop on a 5-minute call with him, right? Can you talk to them? Can you talk to her about some club you were in? I mean, it's just making sure that I'm always passing the torch. Right? I heard a quote one time that I live by now, and it's pretty much, when you get to the top of the mountain, make sure you send the elevator back down. So as I'm continuing to rise, I'm making sure that I'm continuing to send that elevator back down so that people could also rise.
I love that. That's good work. That's good work right there. Now, you work at Google,
Yeah.
and we've heard about the how difficult that process is. It's not easy. A lot of it's a job, like some of the previous people, Airbnb, Goldman Sachs, a lot of these folks,
Mhm.
are competitive, and Google's probably one of the most competitive companies to work in the world. Can you talk how about that process was for you and being able, like, how do we get you there? How did you get yourself there? Like, what was the how,
Yeah.
tell me about the process.
Yeah, it's been a long journey, right? I say the reason why I'm here at Google now is because, I was able to get in the door pretty early, right? So my sophomore year, I did an internship with them, right? Google has something called the Bold internship for anybody watching, and especially if you're African American, Hispanic, in any underrepresented group, I would highly recommend you check out the program. But it's an internship specifically for underrepresented groups. So I looked into it and I said, hey, this is amazing, doing great work. And I applied, right? I literally had no connections at Google whatsoever. I just applied. And I find out that my girlfriend's sorority sister actually worked at Google in New York. So I gave her a call and I said, "Hey, I think she actually still works there to this day. She's a recruiter." I said, "Hey, I know you work at Google. Can I just pick your brain for 5 minutes and see how the job is? How's the company?" And I talked to her. She said it was amazing. She said there are plenty of good benefits. She was having a good experience. And I'm pretty sure she had probably put in a word for me. She didn't tell me she did, but I'm pretty sure she had said something to somebody. And I ended up moving on to the interview process, man. The interview process was rough. It was like 2 1-hour interviews back to back, absolutely no breaks. Questions were intense. I was sweating, sweating my eyes out. It was a crazy experience. But I remember getting that phone call. I was at school, getting the phone call that I got the internship that's probably one of the craziest days of my life that I'll never forget. And then I remember because I had got 2 degrees, I had an extra summer before I officially graduated. So I ended up coming back for another internship that next summer, right? And then it was after that, given the full-time role. So before I even stepped into the full-time role, I had a lot of experience with Google. Had built a lot of relationships here, and I kind of just made my name here, and that kind of helped me, make the transition to full-time.
Yeah, I mean that's as I've heard, it's just a long process. But what I love that you said there is that you really attacked it early. By sophomore
Yeah.
year, you were like, we're gonna figure out how we get into these rooms, and
Oh
that
yeah.
eventually opened the doors. And even something as simple, and we talked about the networking, something as simple as your girlfriend's sorority
Mhm.
sister. You just never know where the network's going to come from, and it's just
Yeah.
important to be able to cultivate those types of relationships. Now,
Absolutely.
uh, now, Justin, you're also an entrepreneur, so I think that's another space that I'd love to talk about. Can you tell us a little bit about the work you do, but then also tell us about the challenge of being an entrepreneur? Because in the essence of time, just one challenge, because I know there's like
Mm.
30 challenges, but if you could tell us what are you doing in that space, and then maybe a challenge that you had to overcome.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm currently doing online health coaching. So officially started in December of 2019. So excuse me, I've been doing it for about two years now. Um, but pretty much it all started from just my passion for health and fitness and my own personal fitness journey, right? Fitness was the thing that opened the door for me to personal development, right? In all ways, because it built my confidence, made me walk a little different, right? We all know when we get in shape, you just walk different. You walk different, you feel different. So I remember when I first got to, just a place where I was comfortable in my body and I felt great. I just remember how much I changed, right? And being addicted to that feeling, right? And just growing in all ways, I eventually really wanted to start helping everybody else with that, right? Now, the challenge for me was my first goal was to open a gym. But I was saying to myself, because I was in school when I had this idea, and I said, okay, I'm in school. That's going to be pretty hard to do while I'm in school. So my question was, okay, what could I start now? Maybe I can open a gym in the future. What could I start now? Again, making sure that you're starting early. What can I start now that would allow me to still get in the industry, but just start, right? And that's when I kind of looked into online health coaching. So 2019, I started my online health coaching program, the Top Life Academy. And as you know it, 3 months later, what happens? The pandemic happens, 2020, right? Mind you, I had no clue that was around the corner. But what happens after at the pandemic? May, April, March, April, right? Gym shut down everywhere. So now that in-person trainer that you were going to every Tuesday and Wednesday is no longer has a job. Everybody moves online, right? So now this whole online world of fitness is blowing up. That allows me to kind of build a foundation, for my business, get a couple clients under my belt, and just start helping people, right? Like you said, I was, before I even started doing it, I was helping people for free and just giving them tips. But 2020 kind of built the foundation. Going into 2021, being able to continue to grow, right? Start building out systems, outsourcing. We were able to double our revenue in 2021, and we're on track to double it again in 2022. So I mean, it's been amazing to look back on the 2 years and see how far it has come, but it's been a journey, man. it's been a journey. And I think just on the challenges side, and when it comes to balancing the business and the job, I mean, it's a lot of it is just dependent on making a decision that this is something that you want, right? I knew what I was getting myself into, right? Having a full-time job and a business is obviously not going to be easy, but when something has a stronger purpose than whatever challenge you're going through, it really doesn't matter, right? So the people I've been able to help, the lives I've been able to change, I mean, that stuff is really what matters at the end of the day. So it pushes me, and to be able to have built that foundation over the last 2 years to now have systems in place where the business can continue to grow, it's a great feeling.
It's really good. I mean, that was what I was going to ask you about the
Mhm.
challenges of balancing those two spaces. But I love that you're
Yeah,
able to navigate it because it shows people that it is possible. There's this myth that you
yeah,
you have to either have the 9 to 5 or the entrepreneurship. But it's great that you're able to really do both and still succeed in both spaces.
absolutely.
I'm going to ask you one more question here, maybe one and a half. So the question I'm going to ask is about you being able to like, what's the tip? Like, can you give us a little piece of advice, any inside information that you
Mm,
can give to a student that A, wants to work at Google, and B, wants to succeed as an entrepreneur? Are there two nuggets, one from each of those spaces, that you can share with us to maybe help somebody find success in either the Google tech space or the entrepreneurship and or health and fitness?
yeah, yeah. So for the Google side of things, I would say, and this really goes for all tech companies, you know, in the social media world we live in now, there really is no excuse anymore, right? Connect, 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 right? When you connect with people, they're going to say, hey, we can't necessarily, sway any decision, but you never know who's talking to somebody. You never know what room they're in, and you never know when decisions are being made. So connect, 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 and make sure that you can just get your foot in the door, right? Whether that is a free program that Google has or any tech company. There's plenty of free programs and courses that these tech companies are offering every single day, every month. So get your foot in the door early, right? That's really what would be my biggest tip for that. And then the entrepreneur space, especially with health and fitness, I would really say think about why you want to start in the first place, right? Entrepreneurship has now become this kind of cultural phenomenon that people think that, oh, if in order to be successful, I have to be an entrepreneur. I mean, you clearly have saw three people before me who are not entrepreneurs. Well, I don't know if they have things on the side, but they're not predominantly entrepreneurs and they're excelling in every way. So it's not the only path, right? So think about, do you really want it? Or is it something you're just doing because, you heard your friend say, hey, being an entrepreneur is cool, or you saw it on Instagram and you think it's a bunch of glam and glitz. I promise you it's not. It's not, but you have to have a deep why behind it, right? It sounds cliche, but we talk about those challenges that I went through up until now. I'm still going through challenges. It really is the core of why I started in the first place that allows me to keep going, right? So if the core of your why is I'm doing it to look cool, or I'm doing it because I want to make a crap ton of money, it's probably not going to push you through those days where you're not getting any sales, or those months where you make no money, right? Or those days where people are telling you you're stupid. Why would you want to do it? It's probably not going to push you through that. So just really, really, really get clear on why you want to do it in the first place. That'll be my second tip.
I love it, man. Justin, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day today and rocking with us here and rocking with our students. It's always a pleasure to chat with you, man. And we'll talk some more,
Absolutely.
as we will. And just say, I'm proud of the work that you do, man, because
Thank you,
it's
man.
incredible that you're able to do both and succeed in both, and continue success. And thank you again.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you for
Thank
having
you,
me.
man. Peace. Absolutely. All right, friends, that's it. I mean, if you didn't get some gems out of that, then I don't know what you're doing. I don't know how you hold on. Let me, there we go. Let me adjust. If you are not getting the work right now, uh, then we got to do some things, right? I want you to push forward. I want you to make sure that you're having those conversations. If you're a person that is from a marginalized group, just let you know that there are others that are in the same room as you. These people that we just spoke to, they're available, they're open, and there's so many more folks like them. Do not stunt your development. Do not hold back. Do not be an inauthentic person. Be great, be strong, be dope. And yeah, I'm just excited about this conversation. My name is Jeff Dess. co-founder of Trill or Not Trill, and we're just happy to have these conversations with the students and all the people that are watching. We'll be back week after week to make sure that you are getting this work. I appreciate y'all and have a great rest of the day and evening, or whenever you watch this. Hope you enjoy the view. Take care. Peace.